Welcome. I am Tanya Hoffman, and this is my Tanya Hoffman's Fabulous TV show. And I'm here with three amazing people because you know that you have to be fabulous in order to be on my TV show. So here they are, and they're about to wow you because every time I talk to them, I'm like, ooh. So it's something that's fun, it's engaging, because when you talk to people that not only are experts, but have a true heart for helping people, those are the kind of people that I like hanging with. So real quick, I am Tanya Hoffman, as you may have guessed, and I'm the CEO and founder of the Public Speakers Association and Career Speaker Academy. And I love showing people how to market themselves, get their message out so that they can truly change the world. So let me go around and everyone introduce themselves. So Teresa, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm Teresa DeGrobo. I'm an influence expert. My book is called Mass Influence, The Habits of the Highly Influential. We're now a bestseller in 7 countries. Yay! Even Italy. Who knew? And I am also the founder and chair of the Evolutionary Business Council, which is a community of emerging thought leaders and thought leaders from all over the world.
Fabulous. All right, Miss Elizabeth, give us a rundown.
Well, I'm Elizabeth Bachman, International Opera Director and Presentation Skills Trainer. And what I'm really passionate about is working with speakers, presenters, thought leaders who are not getting the results they want when they give their speeches. And what I do is help you move a room to take action, the way I've done with Luciano Pavarotti, Placido Domingo, and hundreds of other presenters.
Nice. All right, Miss Alicia, ready?
Okay, well, it sounds like there's an Italian connection here. I have been to Italy. Does that help?
And you sing opera, right?
Elizabeth, yeah, come on. Actually, my name is Alicia White. I'm with Back of the Room Productions, and I help speakers with their messaging and their branding. I want them to look like the expert that they are. I want them to sell products at the back of the room, and that's what I do is I help them develop those products. I help them look like a professional speaker and get them out there. Speaker sheets, retractable banners, you name it. I'm more than a graphic designer, though. I do a lot of branding strategy and also business strategy, and it's tons of fun. Thanks for having me, Tanya.
Yay! So we're going to have a lot of blast today. If you end up with any questions for us, remember you can put it over in the questions area. You could also just message us at the bottom, and we'll be checking that throughout the show. And we'll be recorded, so you'll be able to go back and check us out. You could always go to Public Speakers Association. I put it up at the very top. And you can also find it on TanyaHoffman.com. Remember, it's 1 F, 2 N's, because my husband's family doesn't know how to spell their last name right. So just get used to it. Alrighty, so what we're going to start talking about today is kind of the influence game, because Teresa's here, and of course you have to talk about influence, right? Mm-hmm. And you've got to understand it's about connections. Every single one of us here are connected, and it's not just about, oh, we want to do business together. It's about helping each other. Don't you think that's like the biggest thing that people mess up in their heads when they think about influence? Is it's all about what they're going to get out of it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, very much so. You know, I think that's probably the biggest mistake you see people make, is that they're thinking to become influential, that they've got to somehow promote themselves, brag on themselves. And in reality, it's a lot more like respect. You want to get respect, you give respect. You want to get influence, you give influence.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And don't you think, you know, Alicia, you've seen a lot of people on stage and everything. I was just a keynote last night. Boy, didn't get home until like 11. And the people there, I'm always shocked when the speakers don't kind of give homage to each other and to especially the person putting on the event. It's like it's all about them, and I don't know, it always feels kind of icky.
It does feel icky, and I, like you said, I've been to a number of conferences, and I tell you that the word authentic comes up all the time, and I know it's probably a tired buzzword, but there's no other way to say it. You have to be authentic as a speaker when you're on stage and you're presenting your true self. and you come across as aloof or untouchable, the audience isn't going to reach out to you. They're not going to.
That's probably something, Elizabeth, that you have to teach people, right? Is how to come across authentically on stage.
Well, yes, and being your authentic self, and really, when it's all about getting people to buy the idea that they want to listen to you, and so you have to establish your credibility and your humanity, because it's your humanity that people are going to really respond to.
Yes. And Teresa, I know you're like, so I just love connecting to each one of you, but there's like this sense of, each one of you I think is really powerful, because when I send you somebody, if I refer someone to you, I know that you're going to be a helper. And I think that's a massive difference in a lot of times what people, when they play kind of leveraging in the influence game. What do you think?
Yeah. If I can just comment on that, because I love what with both these ladies are saying. I'm such a big fan of both your work.
Yes.
And I have a something to add on authenticity. Let me just say that, which is that, my definition of authenticity is just a simple one, right? It's your inside voice saying the same thing as your outside voice, right?
Exactly.
And I know you ladies would agree with me, because I've seen your work and heard what you talk about. But when you're focused on the other person, what you can do for them, you're not worrying about what's going on for you, right? If you're sitting there going, oh, am I landing right? Do I look good? Is my hair okay? What's in it for me? All of those are internal conversations that are like inward focused, and they're going to arise or create inauthenticity, right? So when you're focused on the other person and how you can help them, not only do you become more influential, you're more authentic.
Absolutely. And it really is all about, it's about making it about them. And what can you do for them? What do they really need? And then give them what they give them what they want. And then they'll come in and they'll work with you and they'll hire you. Then you can give them what they actually need. But, address the problem that brought them there to listen to you.
Actually, Elizabeth, I've actually had that happen recently where, a person doesn't even know what they want, but then once they discover, oh, okay, I need this, or I want this because I want to look like a professional. I know you do that too. Both of you do, especially when it comes to your branding and positioning yourself as an authority. And then they realize, okay, I understand my how I'm going to lead and how am I going to speak and help others. Now let's get the products out there and put it in their hands. And it's amazing. I love it.
Well,
Absolutely.
And even with you, Alicia, I mean, here you are helping me with rebranding of PSA, and getting our logo. And it makes me so happy when I connect with people that not only can see their vision, but can see your own, right? And I think that's so hard, because I love it when I talk to Teresa or Elizabeth or anybody, right? It's about how can I help them with what they want, not what I want for them, which is, it's sometimes I think it's really hard, right?
It's challenging.
Well, and we're all teachers too. We know a lot. And so the temptation is to get in there and do that. One of the things I say to speakers, it's one of the 3 big mistakes that speakers make, is if you do too much how and not enough why. And that really, speakers are always thinking, well, if I have given enough content, then they'll sign up, they'll want to work with me. But really, it's your job is to be selling hope as a speaker. And I'm talking about a profit speaker. So this is somebody who's either giving an inspirational keynote or giving a speech in order to promote their business. And you're really selling the hope that you're going to be able to solve the problem that they have. They've come to listen to you because they have a problem, and your job is to be selling hope, which is actually why your delivery is really more important than your words.
Yes.
And it breaks my heart. I see so many speakers who spend weeks and months getting the words just right and they don't pay attention to how they're delivering the words.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond that, I think, too, is, every time, if, I've met Alicia and Teresa in person. I can't wait to meet Elizabeth in person. But when we get off stage, we're the same people as we are on stage. Where, you know, it's this greatness. And what I love, Teresa the other day, she's like, Tanya, can I give you a suggestion? And I'm like, yes, you know. It's all of us being there for each other, knowing that we are all in one camp and that we are all here to benefit each other, which I just adore, and that's why I adore the three of you.
Well, and I want to touch on what Elizabeth said. I didn't think about it as being someone who's an informational speaker. So I provide information on how to improve your process or system or whatever the thing is, you know. What I didn't realize until you just said it, and that was I'm actually providing hope.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, it's so, for instance, what you do is you do the help people with the back of the room, and anybody who's ever produced an event, and, you know, I've been in the opera business for over 30 years, so I've produced a lot of events. And if the structures and your support is not solid and together, you can absolutely lose it. And then putting on an event can be a huge waste of time and money. Mm-hmm. So getting it right and working with the pros to support you so that everything moves smoothly, and so that your listeners are saying, oh, this is perfect, I want to be part of this, is the key. And that's actually the key to having influence.
So I love it that you just said that, because, you know, I often talk to my students around the whole notion of, like, give yourself permission to succeed sloppily, because until you're in action, you're not going to learn anything, right? Mm-hmm. And at the same time, the difference between sloppy and really getting it can be $250,000 to $500,000 an event, right?
Yes.
And so, you know, and I don't say that because, you know, and I know especially your audience, Tanya, is not money focused from the standpoint that's not what drives them, you know, and most people these days are really waking up and saying, you know, I'm not driven in business by the almighty dollar, but the dollar is a good measure of how much service you are to the people that you really want to help, you know? Mm-hmm. And so learning those fine skills, and often it's just small little breakthroughs, right? Little distinctions, that it really can make the huge difference between someone who's only moderately influential and highly influential, someone who's okay on stage and someone who's like knock it out of the park, Martin Luther King Jr. on stage, you know? Yeah. And so, you know, I really love dancing in that inquiry. You know, it's why I like talking with people like Tanya on the phone, and I love being on calls with you guys, because it's in the last 10%, the subtle details. I'm Canadian, French-Canadian heritage. I talk with my hands. But it's in those subtleties that a lot of the biggest differences are made.
And you have to remember that Martin Luther King had years and years of practice preaching sermons.
Oh, sure.
And fundamentally, preaching sermons, you're trying to get people to behave in a way that is not self-focused.
Right.
So he had years in that era.
Yeah. What I find, especially with people that are like, oh, I want to be a speaker, right? They already want to be Tony Robbins tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And they want to get paid like Tony Robbins. They want to sell books like Tony Robbins. And I'm like, he didn't start out that way. You know, this is about progressions. And it's also about connections, right? We have to connect with each other and build these relationships that are long lasting. And I think that's a lot of what people, they just want the quick and, you know, I just want it done versus building something that has longevity to it.
And I'll tell you, Tanya, the fastest way to turn off an audience is to let them know that they're a stepping stone. You know, when you treat your event planners, the audience, you know, the people you're working with to get there, no, you have to be as flexible as possible. Now, you know, you have your terms and that kind of thing, but using them as stepping stones, you just can't do that. You get a bad rap.
Yeah.
And I will say that the people like Tony Robbins and Robert Kiyosaki and those guys, they actually spend more time training their delivery and their presentation than they do on their words.
Yeah.
So, yes. Well, don't you think it's funny, Elizabeth? I think that what I see especially new speakers do that I think throws them is that they speak at the audience, right? And then they use these big words that they never would use in real life, right?
Yes, right. Well, some of us use big words in real life, but yes,
the Canadians I'm sure do, but
yes.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Well,
And you've got to meet your listeners where they are.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's very true. You meet people where they're at and take them where you want them to go, right? So
Oh, I
You
love that.
you don't get over in their world. That's a Shonda Perrin quote, by the way. That's not a Teresa de Grosbois original. But, I really think a big part of it, of being of service to your audience, is like, how big of a problem do you solve for them, right? It's one of the top habits of influential people. And, I love that you were talking about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. earlier, because, when you think about it, he became globally iconic at the age of 28.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he did it by standing in the biggest problem going on the planet at the time, racial inequality. But he also, he did it in a very specific way. He chose a very specific problem and a very specific target audience to go after, right? Which is bus riders in Montgomery, Alabama, to boycott the Montgomery, Alabama bus system. And that's the first initiative that he started that really put him on the global stage, And so it bears thinking about it. And I know you ladies agree with me, and I'm preaching the converted here, but I think it bears saying, think about who you're being in terms of what problem you solve for other people. And do you give them real tangible, specific examples that really help them get after solving that problem? I work with a lot of speakers and trainers, and often one of the biggest problems a lot of them have is choosing what their focus is. If you're motherhood and apple pie, like I meet people who are like, I work with women to help them get through difficult times in their life. And I'm like, well, that's half the population. And it's very undefined. What do you mean by difficult times? And when they can hone it down to doing workshops on, okay, I work with women going through the retirement years to figure out what they want to do to contribute to society in their latter years, that's a more specific example. Now people can wrap their heads around that and do something with it.
Well, and that's what I find networking at conferences, speakers, is they're so terrified of narrowing that market, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure Alicia sees it all the time with branding. You try to be, and they get these really fluffy words, and you're like, what do you do? And they're like, well, don't you understand? I'm like, no. They're so scared to label themselves as something, especially if it's a little, because then someone might not like it. And I know as women, we want everyone to like us. But,
and also that's a scarcity conversation.
Oh, yeah.
If you're afraid that there aren't enough people, if you choose a niche and then you're afraid there aren't enough people for it, it makes it really hard to refer people. And I'm referring people all the time. So it makes it really hard to refer people if you don't know who they do or if their niche is too big. But if I hear one more person saying, I help women in transition.
Well, and, on that line, Tanya and Elizabeth, and I know, Teresa, you've come across this too. Just last week, I had a strategy session with someone who I had to have her explain it to me on the phone a month before we met, in an email. And then again, when we were sitting in person, what do you do? Finally, I said, you have got to get this down to 8 words or less. And we worked through it. And we finally came to it. So guys, if you're listening, it's 8 words or less, avoid the fluff.
Yeah. And I know you talk about this a lot, Alicia, but I just want to say it for the people listening. If you've branded yourself around a solution instead of a problem, and I see a lot of people do that, right? They brand themselves around a solution because, in this day and age, if you've read any books on success, you've learned to manage your inner dialogue and dispel your negative self-beliefs and your negative self-talks. And so it doesn't feel good to talk in the language of problem. But the reality is the unenlightened don't speak in the language of solution, right? They speak in the problem. They're only focused on their pain, right? The guy drowning doesn't know he needs swimming lessons. He just wants the frickin' life ring so he can get back to the boat, right? And, he wants the solution to drowning. He does not want swimming lessons. Get him back to the boat and you can teach him swimming. Right. So and I know you guys talk about this a lot. I'm just, saying it for the listeners. Really look at whether you're branded around solution or problem. I like to call that wading into the mud so that you can help people out of the mud, because people who are stuck in the mud can't see beyond the mud puddle. They really can't.
Right. That's a great analogy. Thank you for sharing that, because I had not actually had it explained that way.
And one of the things too is one of the things too is to look at, people are always shocked that I've got rules in my business, right? You got to be nice and you can't be perfect. And people are like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, I kick people out if they're not nice. And they're like, you can do that?
Fire a client? Oh my gosh.
I know. It's like, it's unheard of, I'm like, yeah. I said, hopefully you can keep them from even coming in before you have to refund and all of that. Hopefully you can figure it out before that happens.
You want people to treat you with respect. Pick who you play with. Have boundaries. Right?
Exactly. I just have to tell something real funny on Tanya. So I am a director of one of the Public Speakers Association chapters, and whenever I get to the part, there are 2 rules. You have to, be nice and
not be perfect.
Not be perfect. Gosh. Well, when I say be nice, I always pick someone out in the audience and say, yes, I mean you, Robert. He's not nice, but we let him in anyway, or whatever. It gets a good laugh. So.
But it's a really serious understanding of what we do, right, and who we want to surround us with. And you have to really be clear about who that target is, not just it's a woman, she's 35 and she owns her own business. It's got to be more than that, so that you're in a complete alignment with people. I had a phone call not too long ago with a guy that, I was explaining about the Public Speakers Association, and he was asking questions and he could not understand me. And I'm pretty good about changing angles because my husband's analytical. So you kind of have to dive into certain areas and adjust. And we were just like, I couldn't get him to understand. And then finally he yelled into the phone. He's like, Tanya, would you stop laughing? I'm trying to be serious here. And I was like, which of course then made me laugh. And I'm like, oh, you know what, Jim? This just isn't going to work. If this doesn't work now, it certainly isn't going to be working when you join. So you need to go find someplace else, and it's okay. It's okay. And I'm sure each one of you, you get to that point where you start realizing the value of owning the right people to not only have as clients, but as people that you just generally love and collaborate with and build your business relationship on. That goes beyond that, right?
I love the way Randy Gage talks about this, right? And of course, I'm sure most of you have heard, Randy Gage is one of the top business authors in North America last year. And, I was talking to him on the phone one day because I was really struggling when we first set up the Evolutionary Business Council, because we have criteria for getting in, because we want people that want to transform and change the world, and we don't want people who don't. And there's a lot of people that want to sell to those people that want to come into the EBC, right? And so some people are getting really angry that we wouldn't let them in. And Randy just says to me on the phone, he says, and as only Randy can, he says, Teresa, if you don't have some people really, really mad at you, you're probably not doing anything worthwhile. And he says, you just got to grow up and know that if you're actually putting yourself out there and doing it right, and specifically focusing on a group of people that you can really help, that you're probably going to annoy and piss off a few people, pardon my language. And you just got to be with that. Because,
Yes.
I mean, look at, people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi. I mean, they so annoyed people that they got shot for it. Right.
Mhm.
And look at the benefit that they were to the world. Right. So, at some point, in order to be a leader, you have to be willing to annoy and alienate people who aren't aligned with your vision and aren't going where you're going.
When I launched the Public Speakers Association, I immediately started getting really ugly emails. And used to, a long time ago, I would have been like, why don't they see my vision? What, and it'd be like, oh, it'll be all about me. Now it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. This isn't an alignment for you, right? This it's not speaking to you, and it's really okay. And I think you get to that point where you realize it has nothing to do with you personally. It's whatever is the issue for that person and then their viewpoints, right? But it's hard. I know it's hard especially for women. I think guys have a little bit easier. They're like, if they don't like me, they don't like me. But I think especially for us women, I think we take things a lot too personally a lot of times, So, stop being personal, people. It has nothing, because a lot of times people were upset because I was telling people, well, you don't have to take paid speaking gigs all the time. You can take free ones. And they're like, no, you got to keep paying. And I realized that they were upset because I'm trying to adjust the world to this new format of free speaking, which I call it really investment speaking because there's nothing free about it.
Yeah.
And they are upset because that was the old world and they just want to go back because that was their career. They want to go back to the way it was. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Life moves forward. Things change. You got to adjust and change with it, right?
Yeah.
But
I like to call it no fee
make
speaking, because it's not free, right? You may waive your fee, but the reality is, and anybody who's spoken for any length of time knows this, right? The bulk of the money is in the back of the room sales.
Absolutely.
20% of the room buy a $1,000 or a $2,000 training package off you. That's way more money than a speaking fee. And that's why this is becoming the dominant model in the industry, right? If you're good and you really serve people, they will want to learn deeper from you. So in essence, I actually think the waiving your fee, no fee speaking in exchange for being able to sell programs in the room is forcing speakers to become better speakers. Because if you suck on stage, you make zero money. And if you're awesome on stage and you really serve the room, you can walk away with $50,000, $60,000.
Yes.
That, in my world, is a model that actually encourages people to become highly influential and really make a difference in the world. Because, it's like hockey players. You're no good on the rink. You don't get paid. It's the same in the speaking world.
Well, and there's a big part of that, which is that you've got, I talk to promoters all the time, and I actually book speakers for an event here in San Francisco, and there are hundreds of people who want to come and speak at my event or the other event because people have figured out that this can be very profitable. But speakers who can educate, inspire, and close sales are really rare. And so those are the ones that I work with to teach people how to do that. Because I've seen lots of people who go out there and they speak and they talk about what they're passionate about. But if you're not getting paid for it, if you can't, then you give up. Often, a lot of them give up. And so it's also embracing the pain, being able to put people into pain and connect them with their pain, because in North America, we tend to be fairly comfortable. So you've got to wake people up and say, you've got a problem here. Now, I have a solution. So if it works for you, if we're a fit, let's talk, let's put this together. And rather than just coming and learning a whole bunch of stuff and then you put your notes in your bag and you go home and nothing ever happens.
Well, that's what I'm trying to change the definition of a professional speaker from someone who's paid to speak to the definition of a professional speaker is once they get off stage, that room wants to know them, be involved with them, go further with them. They want to be attached at the hip. I've seen professional speakers do a beautiful presentation that was obviously memorized, go through, and it's just a gorgeous, everyone stands up, clap, 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 yay, and then they sit back down. and not one person goes over and talks to them.
And so
that is just blatantly outrageous.
Yeah, and in my world, if you make your living because you speak, you are a professional speaker, whether you're charging a fee or not.
Well, and, you know, Elizabeth, I haven't heard you speak, but I've heard Tanya and Teresa both speak, and they're definitely keynote speakers. So I would love to hear more, and if this requires an additional call, but I'm sure other people would want to know, how do you transition from being an informational speaker to a keynote speaker that can be influential enough that people will want to buy from them? So, for example, I've given several keynote speeches, but it wasn't directed towards a product or service that I was providing. It was a totally different subject. And because I knew I couldn't sell at the back of the room, but I got paid for it. So how do you marry that?
I think it's very similar. If you've got your signature speech, or I've got 2 or 3 now, but if you've got a signature speech, then your keynote is very similar to your signature speech without the specific, now I'd like you to pull out your checkbooks and write me a check part. But you can always be seeding, since basically your whole speech is your offer, that you can be doing this all the time. And if you think a keynote speech with no offer is not a sales speech, go watch Tony Robbins' TED speech.
I sell almost as much when I'm not allowed to sell as when I am, right? Because I love everything Elizabeth's saying, because it is all in the seeding, which is, you know, basically you teach them something and give them great content and real takeaways, things they can go away and do right now. And then you mentioned that in your online programs or your bigger event that you're selling into or whatever, that you're going into that a lot deeper. And you keep mentioning that throughout, right? It depends on what you want to sell. But, you know, for example, if I was wanting to sell my book, I would say one of the things I talk about a lot in my book that I get a lot of questions on is, you know, how do you get more authentic? How do you deal with that inner voice in your head that's cropping up all the time, especially when you walk out on a stage in front of 1,000 people? And I would say in chapter 5 of my book, I deal with this a lot, and I get a lot of comments and questions on my blog. I'm being a little bit dramatic here for the purpose of making an example. But now the people who are listening are like, oh, she's got a book and it's a bestseller in 7 countries, we heard. Maybe we better go read that book, right? And regardless of whether I sell the book at the end of the call, people are going to be wanting the book, right? So the main thing is you got to know what you're selling, even if you're not selling, right? And usually if I am at a paid gig, and I don't do as many paid speaking gigs anymore because I make a lot more money when I'm allowed to sell. Yeah. But you know, when I'm at a paid speaking gig and they don't want me to sell, you know, usually I will at least try and get people into my funnel by mentioning my book several times, and that I've got a free online 30-day program that's a daily influence builder. It's like 30 days of exercises that you can do that just rapidly have you learn the habits and the techniques of influential people. Notice that I'm seeding right now, right? Some of you are like, oh, I got to go sign up for a 30-day program. By the way, the link is in the chat boxes, right? massinfluencethebook.com. I'm giving you an example right now of how you seed to sell. Once people have signed up for that program and downloaded one of the free copies of my book, because it's up on iTunes and Amazon and all those places for free right now, then I get them into my funnel. Notice that I'm exquisitely seeding while I'm teaching you. Now you want to buy my book and I'm teaching you. I'm peeling back the curtain and showing you how I do it, right? But you got to know what you're selling at the end of that talk or that interview or whatever, because that's what you're seeding throughout the talk. If I was actually selling on today's call, I would be seeding the fact that I teach how to become a best-selling author or mastering influence. But this is just a fun interview because I love you ladies. Yes. So I'm seeding the book, right? So you just got to get really intentional about that and really do it. Not like there's a smarmy way to seed, which is it's not relevant that you talk about that product at that time, or it's like you're bragging about yourself. But I just figured out a way to seed, and once you get good at it, it just comes to you. It'll happen naturally, right? But you'll just remember to keep mentioning, oh yeah, I talk about that in my book a lot, or whatever. Or my students ask me questions about that a lot. That's another form of a seed. Or one of the reasons I wrote my book, that's another form of a seed. So all of those are examples of ways you can get information in that make people want to sign up for your product.
And just like for me, I just came back from a keynote in Burbank. So I was, at this event, and I was not allowed to sell there. I wasn't allowed to have a vendor booth. But by the time I got home, because of the way you structure your presentation is all about what Elizabeth was talking about, is you're connecting with the audience, you're inspiring them, you're giving them hope, you're giving them inspiration that is involved with what you do. So if I was to talk about the Public Speakers Association as my kind of my sell at the end, then I would be mentioning, things like, oh my gosh, when Teresa de Grosbois was at my, virtual summit this last time, and I would mention people and connections and what's going on. So by the end, they know I do virtual summits, they know I have a TV show, they know all of the different aspects. But I didn't even mention them to, sign up. And so I came home just starting. I haven't even done the follow-up yet because, I just got back. But I already had $7,000 sitting there. So it's about putting that information out in a way that isn't like you're forcing it. Because I see a lot of people, they're like, throw out something. You're like, it's like Teresa, if she was to suddenly be talking away and all of a sudden in the book and you're like, where did that come from, right? It's about placing it properly into your talk so that it's doesn't feel like you're forced, like you're just throwing it in there just to say it, right?
Alicia,
it's no accident that we
want to have some fun with
use our own.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Teresa, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Alicia, if you want to have some fun with this, we can coach you right now on how to seed your products. Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Because I know you sell some really awesome branding programs and whatnot. So, give me an example of one of your intro programs that you would want to sell. And then Elizabeth and Tanya and I will give you examples of how you can see that. Do you want to do it?
Well, sure. I guess to clarify, the keynotes that I was presenting was on a totally different topic. It was on my wildlife encounters that I have when I photograph, when I go to Yellowstone to photograph. But I don't have products to sell for that. It was just a feel-good kind of keynote, to kick off a gala.
There is times that you do things as a philanthropy and just a give back. So you have to decide, is that a moment that, because I do a lot with children, that I'm not there to seed anything, right? It is there to help them. And so you have to look at, sometimes a presentation doesn't really seed right in it, even though you always kind of do, because people are always interested in who you are. So it just kind of depends on that. But say if you were talking about speaker sheets, here we are in this platform. We've got people that are obviously, even if you can see who's been watching and who's on now listening as guests, you're like, oh, those people may be interested in branding and having a speaker sheet. So they're like, you mentioned, oh my gosh, and Tanya has this amazing speaker sheet. And I'm like, oh yeah, let me grab it. So then I show them, I'm like, Vic, what Alicia did, right? And so you can easily show people and include something in without ever having to say it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And another great example, because I totally agree with Tanya, if it's off topic, you don't want to be overseeding. And at the same time, you can often subtly work stuff in, right? Like you might have a great shot of a squirrel who looks like he's doing something. And you might say, most of the time I speak on branding because I teach branding. And I just thought this one was hilarious because doesn't he look like somebody hawking
selling nuts?
You know what I mean? Now, it's all about the squirrel and making them laugh.
Right.
But you've just seeded in there that most of what you do is you teach branding. And now there might be 8 or 9 people in the audience that are like, oh, she teaches branding. Maybe I better go ask her about that afterward. right?
Okay.
And so the main thing you want to do is seeding is just that. You're not growing the whole frickin' oak tree.
No.
Yeah.
You're planting the seed of a question in someone's mind. Me mentioning that I've got, Mass Influence, the book that, not only did it go bestseller in all the English countries, but it's like it went bestseller in Italy. Who knew? How freaking weird is that? I don't even know anyone in Italy, right? But me mentioning that earlier is just like planting a breadcrumb, because now people are like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's
right?
absolutely true. Yeah.
And you can see it in all kinds of weird ways. Like I loved what Tanya just did, holding up the brochure, right?
Right.
You could say, I love doing wildlife.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I love doing wildlife photography. Because most of what I do is marketing, which is also really fun because I do a lot of marketing and branding. But it's nice to have the juxtaposition of doing wildlife. And you could even get really funny. And you could say, but really it's all the same. And you could have a shot of a grizzly bear and a shot you did for a marketing spread where they're almost in the same pose.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah.
And by the way, the marketing spread is advertising what you do. And then you could turn that into a joke and say, this is just a little shameless self-promotion. And the audience would laugh. Because it was funny, right? But all of a sudden you've now got a seed in there that actually you're a hobby photographer and a professional photographer, marketing and branding. You get what I'm saying?
I do, totally.
But as long as it's entertaining and contributes to the audience, it's okay to do.
Right.
Thank you, Teresa. And one of the things I do is I implement a lot of humor into those stories. I have a story called Blindsided by a Grizzly Bear. And one of them is, I ran away and the lady said, don't run. And I remember, oh yeah, you're not supposed to run from bears. So I walk, and I'm very animated.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of don't be blind. I mean, Perfect. Because I can use that.
You could elaborate that story into, I could see visions of me with my branding students, and I always tell them, don't do blah, blah, blah. I don't know what. Right? And they always do the exact opposite. Yeah. And I gained a whole new empathy for my students, that would be a great example, right?
Thank you.
For that matter, birds with beautiful plumage they are marketing themselves to their potential mates.
Yeah.
You want to mate and you want to eat. So branding is all over the wild kingdom, if you will, the wild kingdom.
Yeah.
And the beautiful plumage. And one of the other things a joke you could use, one of the things I teach my students all the time is the worm has to taste good to the fish, not necessarily to the fisherman. So you've got this little brown, boring looking bird, and you say, looks like an LBJ, a little brown job. That's what my dad, the Audubon guy, always used to say. If you've got it, this might be a little brown job, but to another LBJ, this might be the sleekest, classiest, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, Yeah. So maybe they're not seeing color, maybe they're seeing something else. You've got to do what your audience wants. And so if your audience is avian and they're gonna pay attention to the way you tweet and the way you fly and the graceful drape of your wing, then that's wonderful. It's just like the way Beyonce puts herself out in another way. Yeah. And it's all about having your unique selling proposition.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Et cetera, and then on from there.
And what's really great too,
bird shots.
You're right.
And
if you look at your audience, because obviously each audience is a little bit different, and one of the things that I see people make mistakes is they treat every audience as the same. And and it's just the same with branding and all. They try to brand to everybody, and so then they only are hitting a smaller percentage. So when I was in Burbank, it was all entrepreneurs or people who wanted to be entrepreneurs. When I spoke last night, it was half entrepreneurs and half state employees. So, I had to bring in a little bit of humor for both and a little bit of information for both so that I could keep everybody's attention. So it's something to kind of get used to, is looking at, who's your audience. And then if you're talking about birds, look some things that you could bring in if they're in a, under the what do you call, the fluorescent lights all the time. You could talk about that with, animals and things. You could talk about different ways to bring them into the conversation so that they feel like they're a part of the conversation instead of just talking at you, right? Does that make sense?
Well, metaphors.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to thank all three of you. Oh my goodness. I mean, to allow me this time to, to have your brain, your wisdom. Oh my gosh, it's huge.
Well,
we want you to be there supporting our speeches. So.
Well, I want to do that, but
and you make me look really good. So I mean,
but what's interesting, I have to say, in the 10 minutes that you ladies shared with me, I have been trying to wrap my brain around for 3 years. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Well, you can't see the frame if you're inside the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those.
Like
that's why we all have jobs, is because to help people give them an outside informed feedback.
And you'll be coaching us on branding next call. I'm sure.
I mean, we just spent like an hour or more with you helping me figure out the new logo design for the Public Speakers Association. I can't see it. You gave me that view. So we all have our specialty, and it's important. That's why I love working with you and Teresa and Elizabeth. You get these eyeballs that we don't have those eyeballs. We need those eyeballs.
One of the things I love about the Public Speakers Association actually is that it's such an high level of conversation. And I'm going to peel back the curtain right now and notice that I'm authentically using an advanced form of influence building right now, because I'm saying something that's true, and I'm building influence for Tanya in that same moment, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things that really is awesome about being a member of the Public Speakers Association is no one speaker has it all figured out. We need each other to learn this stuff from, right? And, I might be particularly good at certain elements of influence building or selling from the stage, just because that's the model I most often use. But that doesn't mean when I meet a speaker who's better at selling from the stage that I don't want coaching from them, or that I might not need branding advice from you, Alicia. And Elizabeth, everything you freaking do is brilliant. I want it any day.
And vice versa, yes.
Yeah, and Tanya, the community you have built here is so awesome. I can't believe anyone would not be a member of the Public Speakers Association in this industry, because there's no guidebook for how to really be successful as a speaker. The closest thing we've got to that is this shameless self-promotion.
There you go.
I just did that to get a laugh. But really, Tanya, thank you for what you've done here, because it's such a contribution to all of us, really.
Well, and it was so funny because we all have those moments with, when we look at opportunities. So I was just at my Manette Riordan's event, and she's brilliant and she's an incredible marketer, and she did all these things with colors and crayons and markers and I was like, what is she doing? Why was she bothered? Why are we gonna do? It's like this, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden I was like coloring, and I had this epiphany. I was like, oh my gosh, So you let go and you be around someone else's brilliance, and we just absorb. We just get to take on what someone else is awesome at, right? But so many people, I think, are fearful of allowing others to own how brilliant they are, which is so sad.
Well, remember the old saying, they always say that about authors, is that, or writers, is that bad writers borrow, good writers steal. There are no new ideas. It all comes from somewhere. And if you can get great ideas from somewhere. But the other cool thing about the crayons is one of the things about perception, one of the things I talk about my students in Mastering a Signature Speech That Sells, you see, Teresa, that's a shameless self-promotion. When I teach people to do a signature speech that sells, we talk about doing visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners and addressing them all.
Yeah.
So being able to play with crayons in a visual and a kinesthetic thing. And it's especially powerful because it's kinesthetic from childhood. And I actually don't know if this generation is going to react to crayons as much if they grow up with iPads. I'm going to have a little niece who's 5, and she works on the iPad all the time. I don't know if she's ever actually used a crayon. So maybe that won't be a good selling tool for her.
Wow.
Well,
because you're right, Elizabeth. I went through core clarity with Carolyn Fitzpatrick, and she had on the table little pipe cleaners and paper clips and Play-Doh, and had little things, bendable things. And she had segmented everyone in their personality traits. It was based on the StrengthsFinder. And everybody on this end played with every single little toy, whereas on the other side, they hardly moved it,
Yeah.
So there's a real reality to it.
It was so funny because I was sitting next to very analytical ladies. It was hilarious, right? And I was like, everything was like swirly and just like outside the circles, right? It was outside the box. And they were like inside, perfect. Everything was outlined. Everything was symmetrical. And I was like, aha! And it was incredible to see the two of us as we had our conversation. Because again, you need the opposite. They had an opportunity to show me things that they were doing that I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about doing something like that, and vice versa. So it's important to put people around each other. And I cannot believe that we're already towards the end of the show. Can you believe that? Oh, so I want to make sure that everyone can connect with each one of you. Please put into the send a message area your website link, and tell us what you're offering today. If you've got a special free offer for our listeners. Teresa, why don't you go first?
Oh, I've already done mine. I just put the link up there. I would love it if you guys wanted to have a look at my book. I really wrote this book for you, for people who really want to make a difference in the world. So you can come to massinfluencethebook.com. We've got a 30-day challenge. Basically, you want to become more influential. You got to give influence to get influence. So we've got 30 days of quick emails. Just little exercises you do every day and watch what happens to your influence. So sign up for our 30-day challenge, and you can download a free version of my book from Amazon or Kobo or iTunes, and reach out and let me know how it's going, because I'd love to hear from you.
Nice. All right, Miss Elizabeth.
Well, what we've got is Star Maker Secrets for Speakers, and it's right on my homepage, elizabethbachman.com, and right there in the upper right-hand corner. And it's a series of short, useful emails. Some of them are video, some of them are written, depends on if you're visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. And it's just a series of tips for speakers once a week, once every couple of weeks, all easy to be integrated. Anything from why not to drink a latte before you speak to how to construct your script and everything in between.
Beautiful.
Yay. All right, Miss Alicia, how about you?
Well, I'm totally downloading both of these gifts because they both sound amazing. So the one gift that I'm giving is a free branding checklist. There is a point where you begin. Let's make sure you have those products in your toolbox, your marketing toolbox at the beginning. Then as you start progressing, and then when you start putting on your own events, there's a big comprehensive list of everything you need to make sure you're promoting yourself as the expert. And you can go to the link that's on the right over here, backoftheroomproductions.com/ branding checklist.
Yay.
Yes.
Make sure you jump on that. And then here's mine. Go to TanyaHoffman.com/win/to win my contest. I choose a person every single month on the first of the month. So we want to make sure you're in on that contest to win a 1-hour coaching session with me, which is $1,000 value. So you want to jump in on that opportunity. I also put up there the publicspeakersassociation.com again. On our website, we've got a speaker's assessment. We've got how to wow an audience and be relatable. We've got a fun little what is it? It's like a little game that you play. So go and check it all out. We have a blast. We'd love to have you on my show this next time. We're looking for people. We're going to be starting booking in January. Plus, we're constantly sending out speaking opportunities that you need to be taking advantage of because guess what? They're booking for 2016 right now. So jump on those. And we're going to be looking for our speakers for our presentation for our virtual summit in Change Your World Virtual Summit in January. So we're full up on December 16th and 17th, but go and watch us there. The information is up under the Summits tab. And please, if you're listening to this, you will want to book these lovely ladies to come speak at your next event. And if you're like, oh, well, later on you're like, I just remember her name was Alicia. How do I find her? Go to publicspeakersassociation.com. There's a speaker search. You just push in Alicia, her face pops up. Same thing with Teresa and Elizabeth. So easy. And of course, myself. You can always get a hold of me. So we would love to have you book these wonderful people to be on your radio show, TV show, your conference, however we can help you, and just connect with us. We've got all of our social media links all right there also. So thank you, ladies, for being on today. I love y'all being on, and I hope y'all come back as soon as you can.
You bet. Thank you.
Total blast. It's really fun.
Yay!
Thanks, Elizabeth.
It was really a blast.
All righty. Bye, everybody. And we will see you tomorrow night. And we're here every evening most of the time, unless I'm out of town or something. Tomorrow, I will not be. You skip over Tuesday and come back Wednesday. I will be in Dallas speaking. So it'll be fun.